Buenas, buenas, apertem os cintos porque o avião vai decolar mais uma vez. Sejam muito bem-vindos a esse histórico episódio do Perrengue de Viagens Funny Stories. Eu sou José Roberto Fonseca e tenho como missão trazer histórias engraçadas contadas por pessoas muito interessantes. Olá, obrigado pela tua presença, obrigado por estar aí nos escutando. Um lembrete muito rápido. Siga a gente no Instagram, @perrengue de viagens, vai aparecer aqui embaixo, acione o sininho no YouTube, siga a gente no YouTube e para continuar com esse projeto e para levar histórias engraçadas para quem ama viajar. E hoje é um momento histórico. Primeiramente, quero agradecer você aí que está em casa, você que está escutando esse podcast, você que é perrengueiro, você que ama viagens e que nos ajudou a chegar em mais de 1.100 seguidores em muito pouco tempo. Obrigado por você nos ajudar, obrigado por vocês estarem curtindo o conteúdo, mandem sugestões e desde já muita gratidão por vocês fazerem parte desse projeto. Muito obrigado mesmo. E hoje é um momento histórico, como eu disse na abertura. Nós temos um convidado, não é só um convidado, é uma pessoa, é um amigo e é um gringo. Pela primeira vez nesse programa a gente traz um gringo. Esse gringo, eu vou falar um pouquinho dele e obviamente ele não fala português, então vai ter que ser em inglês, mas vocês vão poder acompanhar com legendas em português, que o Caião depois vai colocar pra gente, daqui a pouquinho já vai aparecer, tá bom? Fique com a gente, preparamos um episódio muito legal, com histórias muito engraçadas, um senso de comédia britânica, já dei uma pista de quem vem por aí, e eu vou mudar pro inglês agora. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Perrengue de Viagens. Fasten your seatbelts because the airplane is about to take off. Today, I'm here with a special guest. He's more than a special guest. He's a very close friend of mine. We had the privilege to work together in the same company for years, more than 10 years. And I'm very proud of, having this special person here. I will be saying a few things before introducing him. Yes. So he's son of Mr. Peter and Miss Valerie. He was born in Essex, in England. He has 3 marvelous kids, Emily, Maddie, and Will. And Will is living currently in Australia and Brisbane. He loves Chelsea. He's one of the person responsible for introducing me the Chelsea environment in my life. And I found out, Chris, that you love beef Wellington. I didn't know that. And also an Indian takeaway, curry. You also love wine, looking at your phone for football news and updates, going on holidays with your family. You just came back from your holidays, cycling, walking the dog, napping. Now you are retired, and sleeping. And loves being the organizer of the family. This is you are very inspirational on that. And someone who just gave me these details just said in her own words, he's just overall amazing. Welcome, Christopher Travis at the Perrengue de Viagens. Thank you very much, Chris, for being here with us.
Hey, Jose, that was quite an introduction.
Did you like that?
Who's guilty?
Emily, thank you very much for helping me out. So till last night we were exchanging WhatsApp messages. Hey, Emily, help me with some details, and she did a great and amazing job, didn't she? Very proud.
Should I be concerned that you have my daughter's phone number?
No, so we can tell about that as well. Last time I was in England, so we had to go to, and drop the gifts that I had and I gave to you and to your lovely family in her office. Remember that?
Of course, I remember that.
Okay.
Excellent.
We have more details about that. So, Chris, one more time. You are just not a friend, so you are a special person in my life. I'm very proud and very glad to have you here. And thank you very much for accepting to this, to join me on this crazy idea. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
And I hope we are going to enjoy, based on your lovely stories, some perrengues de viagens, funny stories. And I was telling our audience that this is the first time we have a gringo We have someone special in our
I
program.
heard that.
Did you? Okay. See that your Portuguese is better than my English then. So
It's
it's really, really
improving.
good. Yeah, it's improving. So yes, thanks for being here. Let's start. No more little stories. What have you prepared for us in terms of funny stories? What's the first funny story that we picked up? Our audience is extremely, looking forward to that, Chris.
So I'll go back to the beginning,
Okay.
back to the early years, right? I mean, what year were you born?
I was born in 1981.
So I began my career in the travel industry in 1983.
Okay. I was a
And I
little
think,
baby.
yep, many would say you still are, but that's another story.
Okay.
But I think it's fair to say you worked in travel agencies as well, right? And
I did,
we all
yes.
know that you don't really join the travel industry to make millions of pounds, right? But you hope you're going to be working in a great industry with great people. You'll have some laughs, some fun, and certainly back in the 80s, there was actually a lot of benefits. So there
Yep.
was always the opportunity to do some traveling. So I just thought I'd share a couple of, kind of funny little stories from when I first began. This was mainly with Pan Am, right? Pan Am, the airline.
Pan Am, wow.
So Pan Am,
Time.
all those
There was
years ago.
no, Chris, sorry for interrupting. There's no e-ticket. We used to travel with those big, documents with different colors, right? So,
So my very first job in travel was as what was called a messenger. So I was a ticket delivery boy.
wow, I
So
didn't
my
know
job was I had to run around London. When I went for the interview, my boss said to me, "We'll get you a motorbike." And when I started the job, he said, no motorbike. We'll get you a bicycle." I said, "Okay, that's fine." But he never got me a bicycle, and in the end, my shoes kept wearing out because I did so much walking. So he just bought me a pair of shoes. True story. But no. So going back to my trip, so I won a ticket to go to America, and I didn't have a girlfriend at the time, so I traveled on my own. And I went to Boston to visit some family. I was going to Boston, and then I was going on to Orlando. And back in those days, when you had a free staff ticket, you had to travel as if you were going to work, right? So I
yep.
was traveling in a suit and a tie and a shirt because sometimes you got upgraded to fly in business class, right? So I flew to Boston. I had a good time. I stayed with my relations in Boston, and then the time came for me to go down to Orlando because I was going to go to Disney World for the first time. And we're
Wow.
driving to the airport, and I got to Boston Airport, and I suddenly realized that I had a Samsonite massive suitcase, but I'd left the key for the suitcase, I'd left in the bedroom at my auntie's house.
No
So I
way.
now knew that so I had to travel to Orlando in my suit. And she said, "It's not a problem. We'll arrange. We'll FedEx the key down to you." But obviously, it was going to take maybe 2 days or whatever to get there. This was
Yeah.
the 1980s, right? So I arrive in Orlando. It's really hot. I'm wearing a grey woolen suit. And the next morning, I called a local shop, and they sent a guy over to try and open the suitcase. He said, "We can't open it. The only way we can open it is to break it." Didn't want to do that. So I decided to try and buy some more clothes for my day, but I wasn't old enough to rent a car, so I could only walk somewhere, and there were no shops. So I could only go to the hotel shop, and I bought an Orlando, Florida t-shirt, but that was all I could buy. And so to make matters worse as well, I had no toiletries. So when I had a shower that morning, I had no shampoo. The hotels then didn't have free shampoo. And so would you believe I washed my hair with soap?
Okay.
So my hair was all like stuck together.
Yeah.
And I went to Disney World in a blue Orlando t-shirt, my gray woolen trousers, and my hair stuck down. And that was my first experience in America. And that was pretty fun. That's a funny story. It's really hot as well, right? Like 30 odd degrees.
Hot and humid. When was that, Chris?
That was in like 1986, I think. So
Okay.
quite a long time ago. But soon after that, just one other quick story from those days as well. When you went to the airport, you always hoped that you would be upgraded, right?
Yeah.
And so my wife and I, we were told we were going to America again. And I think this time on Virgin, we hoped we were going to be upgraded. And when we were at the desk, when we checked in for the flight, they said, "Very sorry, you're not going to get an upgrade today." So we were very disappointed. So we went through into the departures area and we just ate a massive Burger King, right? Because we thought we're on a plane for a long time. We don't want airline food. So we just ate a massive Burger King and we got to the door of the airplane full up. And then they said to us, good news, you've been put into business class.
No way! You had your Whopper. Oh, I had my
So we
Whopper
got
already.
into,
Triple Whopper.
had your Whopper. So we got into business class and we still ate every single piece of food, including an ice cream sundae. And we spent the whole flight just feeling really uncomfortable. So they were just, a couple of short stories, I hope, from the early days of travel when there was lots of benefits and we used to have a lot of fun.
And Chris, just that's funny. So, and how long is the flight from London to Boston? Like you're talking about 6 hours, 7 hours?
Yep, 6, 7 hours.
Okay, and then you had to take a flight from Boston, Massachusetts to Florida, right?
That's correct. Just a couple
Okay.
of hours, I guess, but all the time wearing a suit and tie. It's horrible.
Yes, I can see you that wearing. And so you have been traveling a lot because you are a travel guy. When we talk about Chris Travis, right? Automatically in our minds come like yes, it's the travel guy, customer service mindset, all those things. But you have been traveling a lot even before working for the company where we work together. So, do
Mhm.
you have an idea how many countries you have visited so far?
I have actually looked at that. So it's 42 countries.
Wow, 42
I don't know
countries
if
in.
that's a lot, right? But I mean, I've
Come
been very
on,
lucky that
man. So we're talking about one
I
third
have
of
been
the
to,
countries, right, in the earth.
well, and all of the continents, North America,
Exactly.
South America, South Africa, Australia, Asia. So yeah, very, very lucky guy.
And you have a special
Europe.
reason to go back to Australia, right? So you have plans for that?
We have my son is there, yeah, of course. So we're thinking about it, but it depends when he'll come back. He might be coming back sooner than we think, so
Oh,
maybe
really?
early next year.
Okay.
So maybe we won't have to go. Maybe we'll see him somewhere else.
Okay, well, if you are watching this, hang in there. Your papa is coming. Come on. Debbie is playing as well. I think it's going to be in coach class, but anyway.
It will be most definitely in coach class.
Yeah, it's just not like the old times, right? Old times, old times. And Chris, considering you have visited 42 countries, which is the most beautiful place that you have ever visited, in your opinion, that you would go back, but you wouldn't take someone that who you know, and who is this person?
So not a place that I've been to, but when you leave work like I have, one of the first things that you do is you set up a bucket list of places that you want to go to, right?
Fair enough.
So right now at the top of the list, somewhere that I've never been is India. And
Okay.
I'd really like to visit specifically a region of India called Kerala.
Okay.
But I can tell you for sure, I love him very much, but there's no way I'd take my father because I enjoy an Indian takeaway, like you said earlier. I love the
Jesus.
food. He hates the food, and he
Yeah.
also always he's in his 80s, so sometimes he has tummy troubles. I don't think he needs lots of Indian food, right?
The best company, yeah. So, Sir Peter, I agree with you. No Indian food, yeah. So no curry. So the smelling is awful, but anyway, I respect Chris. And I thought that picanha could be something that you love, but anyway, this is another story. We can talk about that next time too.
There's
Anyway,
too many stories.
yeah, I know that. So tell us about the second funny story that you prepared for us, please.
I'd like to tell you that the travel business is a very small industry, so you've got to
Yes.
watch out, right? So, back in 1993, my wife and I went to Malaysia. We
Okay.
did a tour around Malaysia. We went to a small town called Cherating,
Mm-hmm.
and that our stay in Cherating was quite amusing to begin with because we stayed on a campsite that was run by a guy who had Tourette's, and he just kept swearing all of the time, right? We didn't know what Tourette's was at the time, but he just kept swearing, which was funny. But he recommended that we went to a beach bar that was a short walk away that night. So we were on our holiday. We walked down this dark path and we came to the beach and we found this beach bar. It was nighttime, beautiful lights, hearing the waves and everything. There was nobody there, just the two of us and the barman.
Wow.
And maybe after our first drink, we'd been in there for maybe 10, 15 minutes. Suddenly one person arrived to come and join us for a drink. And it was somebody that I used to work with at Hog Robinson at HRG. She was on a round the world travel and she had ended up in Cherating, and she just walked into the same bar as me, which was like unbelievable. So we had a conversation. We had a good evening. We said our goodbyes. The next day we went on a boat to Tiaman Island, which is a beautiful tropical island off of Malaysia. It rained all of the time we were there, and there were spiders the size of dinner plates. So it was just not a good experience. So we couldn't get away quick enough. So we got on an aeroplane from Tiaman and we went to Singapore.
Okay.
And when we went to Singapore, we had to take the metro into the city center. And we took the metro and we went up on these escalators. And when we arrived at the street level, right in front of me was my old boss from Hog Robinson.
No
He
way.
was sat on a wall he was with his father, and he was sat on a wall with a map book looking around Singapore. So in the space of like 2 or 3 days in Malaysia and Singapore, I met two colleagues from HRG. And again, it just shows, I think, when you work in the travel industry, one of the reasons that you join is you have a passion for travel. You want to travel the world and go to all these crazy places. But it does mean it's a very sociable industry, and you will bump into friends.
So be careful. Yeah. It's so, yeah. There's no coincidence, right?
No, it was just the strangest thing.
Yeah, just a couple of years after being in Florida, you were in Singapore. Yeah, yeah, working in the travel industry, it's gives us those sort of experiences, in which I'm so grateful too. So anyway, okay.
Yeah.
And was Debbie with you in Singapore as well, Malaysia? Yeah, she
Yeah,
was, right?
yep, she was in there. Yep. We didn't
Okay.
go to see Puyi that time. Didn't know her yet, but maybe
Yeah,
we walked
Pui,
past each other in the streets.
Pui Tam, who is our beloved, workmate, our colleague. Pui, if you're watching this episode, yes, your name has been mentioned, and I hope everything is well with you in Singapore. I think she's out of office this week. I'm not sure, but anyway, good. Hope you are watching us. Follow our at Perrengue de Viagens on Instagram, Pui. Click on the YouTube icon. Follow us, please. And
And make sure you like it.
and I hope, yeah, we cannot forget talk about the GTT, right? So hang in there, our lovely audience. You're gonna be, hearing more about GTT. Yeah. Get stuck this name in your head, GTT. So, Chris, we talked about U.S., Massachusetts, Florida. Then you flew and you took us to Malaysia, Singapore, Asia. Which is the next destination?
Where will be the next destination?
Exactly, yes. Where will be the next
Wow.
destination?
It's probably going to be in England, right? Because I don't have any money anymore. But I think we are seriously having a holiday in England this year. But I hope maybe next year with the family. I mean, let's face it, the kids are all now getting much older, so
Yeah,
the opportunities are much more limited now for the five of us to go on holiday. So I think we're going to try and do, maybe when my son gets back from Australia, we'll try and do one more. Maybe we'll go to the US or Canada next year and have a road trip. That might be the plan.
lovely. Yes. No one wants to visit South America. Sorry about that. It is what it is. Anyway, I'm trying to convince these guys. Like for years, Niagara Falls, we have Iguazu Falls, jungle, we have Amazon, beaches, we have, the entire northeast of Brazil, Fortaleza, Jericoacoara. But if one of these guys comes to Brazil, they will never be back to their country because they are gonna love our country. We just need to promote
Okay.
better Brazil, right, out
You
there. So,
definitely have the best meat. I've never
yes.
had picanha like you cooked for me was the best.
Thank you. Very, very diplomatic as always from you.
And
Thank
the
you very much.
caipirinha, of course. And
Yes.
Palmeiras.
And Palmeiras, yes. So São Paulo bet Palmeiras last night. That was wonderful. In the stadium where we were, by the way. So that was great.
Nice.
I'm taking Pedro to the next match. Tell us about the third funny story, Chris, that you prepared, please.
So I've had a couple of funny experiences with music. So the first one, a quick one in Moscow.
Mhm.
I was lucky enough, I went to Russia. I stayed in Moscow and I traveled on the very famous Moscow metro, which is beautiful. If you ever have the chance, maybe you won't now, right? um, but I had to go there on business several times, and the underground there is beautiful with marble, but there's always music playing. And what made me laugh was that it's quite deep, so they have very long escalators to take you up to street level, and there's always piped music playing.
Mhm.
So it's July, it's really, really hot in
Hot.
Moscow, and
Okay.
I'm going up the escalator, and I suddenly hear the song "Santa Claus is Coming to Town"
Wow.
in July.
In
I'm just
July.
like listening to this music, thinking, "Is that Santa Claus is coming to town?" So that was kind of weird with music. So that was one experience I had with music. But my favorite one was when I went. I was very lucky. I went to Tokyo. One of my favorite places to go on business was Japan. I love Japan, and one day I hope to go back on holiday. And hello to all of the many friends that I made in Japan when I was there. Um, but I was in a meeting room. So day one, we have a meeting all day long. We finish, 5 o'clock, 5:30. But around about 5 o'clock, I'm sitting in this meeting room with 7 or 8 other people, and in the distance, I can hear this fairly quiet music, and it was kind of like Teletubby music. So the Teletubbies and the sort of
Yep.
children music that they
Uh-huh.
have.
La, 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 la,
So
la,
yeah,
la,
so I'm a little bit jet lagged. I didn't know. I'm in the meeting. I'm looking around. I'm looking at my bag, wondering if there's something playing in my bag. I don't know. The music lasted a few minutes and then it stopped. I looked around. No one else was reacting to it. I thought,
Fair.
okay. So the next day, same meeting room, same situation, around about the same time, I heard this same music. It was just strange. Again, I'm looking around, and no one else is bothered by the music. It was just playing outside or wherever. Very strange. So on the third day, when it happened again, I had to ask someone. I put my hand up and I said, "What is that strange music, and why is it playing?" And I hope this is kind of funny, but also I think it's interesting that in Japan and in a lot of the districts, of towns and everything, they have speakers, which are quite normally hidden, like in
Mhm.
bushes or whatever, but sometimes you can see them. But they're in place for their disaster, announcements. So if they have another tsunami or whatever, they can use these speakers for announcements. But on a daily basis at 5 o'clock, they play what's called the going home music, and it's children's music, because the theory is that it's music that's played and it then tells the children that wherever they are, it's now time for
It's
you to
now
go
time.
home.
Wow.
And I just found it really interesting. I mean, it made me laugh, but I just found it really interesting, especially just being in a meeting room and you've never heard of this, you've got no clue what's going on, and hearing this strange Teletubbies like music in the streets below. It was a very, very strange experience. So yeah,
Wow.
music has come into my life as well.
Now it's interesting because the first episode of our podcast, there was Marina Shimada. She's the travel manager for Honda. And before becoming, travel manager, she used to work for one of the Brazilian airlines, Varig. Not sure if you heard of
Yep,
it. And
yep.
she, because she speaks Japanese, she was one of the cabin crews for the route between Los Angeles and Tokyo for Varig. And she
Nice.
visited Tokyo. She did that no route 52 times, and she loves Japan.
Wow.
Of course, she's Japanese descendant. So yeah, she was her first our first episode. She was here, and her funny story is like on the plane. There was a Japanese, he was around 80 years of age. It was his first time flying to Japan, knowing his, because he was so, no, first time that he was flying back to Japan, because he came to Brazil, he was pretty young. And one of his dreams was like dying in Japan. And
Wow.
guess
Okay.
what happened? He passed out, right? On the plane when the plane was about to land in Tokyo. Can you believe that? Yes, it was
That's
one of
strange.
the weirdest story that we heard in this podcast. Was in the first episode. It's in Portuguese. But Marina, kisses, beijos pra você. And yeah, Tokyo. So Renata's grandfather, he came. He unfortunately he is no longer with us, but he came from Japan, and one of Renata's, my wife's dream is going to Japan. Hope we will be able to make enough money in 20 years time to go there. It's extremely expensive now with the kids. Okay, forget that. Maybe bonus is not enough. Anyway, let's turn on the page and let's go for your fourth story that you prepared for us. So we talked about US, we talked about Malaysia and Singapore, and we talked about Japan. And now what do you have prepared for us?
Well, we're back to kind of Russia and Japan again, because I just want to talk a little bit about food. I mean, I love my food. And, one of the great things about, different to what some people might say, I don't travel around the world, but always look for fish and chips, right? That's not true. So wherever we go, I love in Singapore, I love the chili crab. I love your picanha in Brazil. I've always been very fortunate that wherever I go, I've always been hosted really, really well. And I can use this opportunity to actually thank everybody that's hosted me during my many years of business travel. And, I've had many memorable experiences, but food plays a big part. And of course, the other one for Mike in Canada is petunias, the chips with gravy and cheese. Wow, that was healthy.
My first Canadian meal when we were in Montreal together back 2015. Remember that? We were there, and then my first Canadian meal for breakfast was poutine. I love that. I can't.
For breakfast?
For breakfast, yes. Imagine that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Anyway,
I'm surprised you didn't die. But yeah. So let's talk about so with food. So, do you know the difference in Japan between sashimi and sushi?
We do, because of Renata's family.
Okay, I did not know the difference. Right.
Okay.
So I arrived in Tokyo. I traveled with an old friend of ours, with Nikki Hook from the UK. We traveled to Tokyo together. We traveled overnight. We had the first day. We were a bit jet lagged, and when you're jet lagged, you have your stomach is a little bit unsettled, right? So our wonderful hosts in Japan, they said, okay, what would you like to do for lunch today? Do you want to go and have ramen? Do you want sushi? Do you want sashimi? Something different? And I thought I knew what sashimi was, but I think I might have got it confused with something else. So they took us to this beautiful sashimi restaurant, very expensive, very exclusive. But oh boy, it's not the thing to eat just after you get off an aeroplane and when you feel a bit queasy, because we were presented with a plate that had 6 different pieces of raw fish on it, but the pieces were huge. Wow. And my host, you'll remember Kumiko in Japan, even she did not know what each of the pieces were. She couldn't tell me what I was eating.
And the only thing that you knew was rice, right? There was made from rice as well, right? But anyway, the fish.
Yeah, I think it's more like sushi. So sashimi is all raw fish.
Exactly.
Sushi involves a little bit more the rice.
Yeah.
If I remember rightly, we did have some rice on the side, so you kind of start trying to hide some of your sashimi under the under the dish. That was a very difficult thing to eat. So that was fun being in Tokyo, and having the raw fish. Another time I went to Madrid, and I think it was when I was working for HRG for Hog Robinson, and I had a very, very difficult meeting to go to. It was I was going to see somebody who didn't want to see me. We were delivering bad news or difficult news. I was a travel agent, account manager at the time. But so we had the meeting. He wasn't very happy, but he understood. But he insisted that he wanted to host us for lunch before we went back to the airport. Okay. So he took us to a very nice restaurant in Madrid, very traditional, but he insisted that he was going to order the food for us. And I was with a colleague. And for my colleague, he ordered, it was hake gills in a green sauce. So hake is the fish, and the
Yeah.
gills are, what they
Mm-hmm.
breathe through.
Hey.
They were like little white pieces floating in this green sauce. And for me, he ordered an oxtail,
Mm. Okay.
with which had the richest, darkest sauce all over it, right? And I now afterwards we kind of both got in the taxi to go to the airport. We're sitting in the taxi saying, "I don't feel so good." So
Something is wrong.
I got to yeah, we got to the airport. We weren't very happy at the airport. You can imagine. I won't say anything else, but I'm still convinced to this day that he took us to that restaurant as a bit of a joke to get back at us and give us some food that he knew we probably wouldn't like. But what I would say, my favorite thing was actually with Puyi from Singapore. On the good side, one of the best meals I had when I was traveling was again in Japan with teppanyaki.
Wow.
Um, but the funny thing with that was that my host couldn't join us that evening. So she wrote the name of the restaurant in Japanese on a piece of paper,
Okay.
and she gave it to us, and she said, "Just hand this to the taxi and he will be able to take you to the restaurant."
Okay.
So we got in the taxi, we showed him the piece of paper, he took us to the restaurant. We arrived in this street, and he stopped the car and he opened the door, and we got out. But only then did we realize we were in a street full of restaurants, but only restaurants, both sides of the road. It was dark. All of the restaurants had lights. Everything was written in Japanese, of course.
Wow.
So all we have is this piece of paper, and
With the
we're
name
having
of
to walk around looking at the signs with our
trying to
piece of
match
paper,
the letters or the
trying to
figures.
match, yeah, trying to match up with a sign. And of course, we made some mistakes before we finally found one. But we went in there, and Kumiko had pre-ordered our food for us. There was beef and prawns and all sorts
Wow.
cooked in the teppanyaki style. So it was very difficult to find, but we found it and had the most amazing, incredible experience in Tokyo.
Wow. Food, food, food. Thanks, Chris, for sharing that. That's interesting.
That's my fourth story.
Yeah, no, I would take someone who speaks Japanese with me. Maybe Renato's mother will need to travel with us if we go to Japan one day. But anyway,
I think it's a good idea.
yeah,
It's a good idea.
Renata and Victoria, my daughter, they look like a little bit, Japanese somehow. But anyway, it's fake Japanese girls. Yes. So, Chris, do you have anything else in terms of you have one more story that would you like to share with us before we close this wonderful momentum of the podcast of our podcast?
I could probably talk to you for hours, but I
I know.
think they're some of my. But I have stories for you about Turkish baths and all sorts of stuff and strange experiences like that. But it's probably best I just leave it there, and maybe that's for part two.
Yeah, I'll refer to sponsors one. Yeah, like that. But anyway. So, Chris, just before we are getting to the end of this episode, but before that, so I just would like to say a few words about you, and also I welcome you to help me out with the why you're in this T-shirt. But before that, so I just would like to share with our audience how much grateful I am for becoming one of your friends, right? So we were colleagues. So you were my boss for several years in the company that I worked for. But I think one of the greatest things in my life is like we became friends. And I remember for the first time when I heard one of my kids hurt, beating. I called you. Remember that? Say, hey man,
Mhm.
today, and the sense of a family that you have with you and how you care about your family is something inspirational as well. And professionally speaking, oh my God! So you are diplomatic. You're so knowledgeable, and we miss that. And I know you're enjoying your retired somehow life from the corporate environment, from the business environment, right? I don't think you miss anything of that. But anyway, except the
No
work
comment.
day. Work day. No, but I want to. In one of the things, so we had the opportunity to visit England last year, back in April 2022, and you got tickets to take me and myself and my family. So we were in Wembley together. So watching Chelsea, that was, I think, the peak of one of the greatest moments in my life. I would never and ever forget. So we have a marvelous photo in front of the Wembley Stadium, and I found out even Pelé never played at Wembley. But we
Wow.
were there. I was there, the Brazilian. So Pedro was in the big screen. So till today, we will remember for the rest of our lives that special moment. And I thank you very much for that. And we have a lovely tea with your wife in the last day before going to the airport. Remember that? So I'll never
I
forget
do.
at Covent Garden. So I'll never forget that. But more than that, so you are wearing a T-shirt. It's the one of the Lisbon sightseeing, right? The one of the Bonde
Yep.
in Portuguese. The electric, I don't know, it's electric car, but anyway. And it says GTT, Global Travel Team. So do you want to have a few words about that, please?
Well, it
Before
could.
going?
I was thinking, it could be the greatest travel team.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, yeah. I like that. I like that.
And
Good,
this
good
was,
shot.
you won't see, but maybe hope you can see that. But everybody's names on the
Yeah, we see
back.
Chris, Inge, Gert, yes, Stephanie, Mike, Jose, Boris, and Pui. Yeah? All
That's
right.
right. And I think I'm very. So I left my job at Merck. I was the global director for travel strategy at Merck. Up until 2021, and that's when I had the pleasure of leading this group of people. And I sort of semi-retired back in 2021. I'm now just working part-time, but I did have the pleasure of leading this team of people. This T-shirt was put together because the team started to break up. There were reorganizations and people leaving back in 2021. So this T-shirt was arranged, and each of the members of the team have it.
Exactly.
I was very happy to have you in London. I think one of the great pleasures you mentioned is about friends. So we worked hard, we played hard, but we collaborated effectively, very effectively. I think we had a leading travel program and we had a leading team of people. But the nice thing for me is that, sometimes when you leave a company and when you leave a job, you lose touch with people, right?
Yep.
But we've stayed in touch. I still talk regularly to everybody. On Sunday, this coming weekend, I'll be having Steph from the US will be in London, so we'll be
Oh,
seeing each
great.
other.
Yeah.
And that means that actually, of the 7 people that reported into me, it means that there'll actually only be 2 people left that I haven't seen in person since I left the company. So despite people being in all of the corners of the world, somehow we've managed to organize it that we see each other. So everybody in my team wanted to have one last team meeting together, which they wanted to have in Lisbon.
Lisbon. Yeah.
COVID kind of got away in a way of that,
All
but
plans.
also everything else. So who knows? Maybe one day the team will have their dream, but we couldn't get together in Lisbon, so at least we have a T-shirt with Lisbon on it.
At least we have a T-shirt. So, so Travis, thank you very, very much for being here with us. Unfortunately, this is about to end. I would stay here for a few hours, listen to your lovely stories. But anyway, I wanna thank you very much one more time. I know it's quite late for you in England, so thank you very much. Thanks for sharing all your stories. Thank for everything that you put together. I know the effort that you got pretty well prepared for days, and I know you.
I
So
always
we have been
prepare.
talking for days about this, and that was possible. So one of the greatest things in my life is some dreams are coming true. So and I'm very glad to have you here as the first gringo and the Perrengue de Viagens Funny Stories.
Jose, it's been my pleasure being on here. Thank you for inviting me. Maybe my appearance today will encourage some of your other old colleagues to do it.
For sure. Yeah.
It's been fun. Thank you for giving me the platform as well to say a few messages to old friends and to thank everybody for how they've looked after me over the years. And I think my final message would be, I worked in the travel industry and on the corporate side for 37 years. I mean, I started as a young
37
boy,
years. Wow.
37 years. And I started by delivering tickets and I ended up as the global travel director at a large pharmaceutical company. So I've lived the dream, right? I've
You
had a
did, yeah.
great career. I've met so many wonderful people. And I would just say to anybody who's beginning their journey in the travel industry. You know, you're lucky, you're working in a great industry, you'll meet lots of people, you'll have lots of experiences. And people sometimes ask me what the secret of my own success was, and I think I would just leave you with the message that just treat other people like you would want to be treated yourself. So you can apply
Wow.
that whether you become a manager or whether you're looking after a customer. Just think about how you want to be treated, and then that way, I think if you use that message, you'll always manage your people effectively and you'll always service your customers effectively. So thanks again. It's been a
That was
pleasure.
awesome, Chris. So thank you very much. I will close in Portuguese. So Chris, stay safe, safe travels, wherever you're gonna go.
Obrigado.
Oh! Bom, chegamos ao final desse episódio, desse momento histórico, que é um convidado especial, o Chris Travis, diretamente da Inglaterra, de Access. Vocês puderam acompanhar. Espero que tenham gostado das histórias engraçadas e todo o aprendizado que a gente pôde ter aqui. Uma mensagem final do Chris, eu acho que vale a pena. Ele tem 37 anos de experiência na indústria de viagens, é uma pessoa com conhecimento enorme. E a mensagem final, trate o próximo como você gostaria de ser tratado. Então isso está faltando bastante hoje no serviço e principalmente na indústria de viagens do Brasil. Então fica esse alerta, tá bom? Obrigado por vocês terem nos acompanhado mais uma vez. Obrigado por estarem aqui, estar ouvindo a gente no carro, acompanhando em casa, no computador. Espero que vocês tenham gostado. Obrigado. Até a próxima. Vem coisa boa por aí. Tchau, tchau.